Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for White and White Sense, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Friday the 4th of October 2024. Chris and I have spent the week pulling together the newsletter. A huge thank you to everybody who has contributed to the member questions. I think there's 4 in this issue. It's really interesting researching and finding out the new facts that we didn't know about each subject. So I hope you all enjoy the newsletter. It won't be out for a couple of weeks because that's how long it takes the printers to turn it around. Also, thank you to those who came to the members' feedback and chat. This is a really important group and I encourage people to come along, hear the feedback of what's going on at the charity and also your feedback about how we can help you. We've already started looking at the issues that came up this time, which is help at St Mary's Eye Hospital, a mainland stride and some help and training with fall prevention. All of these will be looked at individually and there'll be feedback in the December meeting, which is the 4th of December for Site for White and the 27th of November for White Sense, both during the coffee morning. Also included within the newsletter is a lot of save the dates, so do pop them in your diary and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Site for White and White Sense.
Here is this week's charity news, 4th of October 2024. Swimming is on Monday at Medina Leisure Centre between 1:15pm and 2pm. The cost is £6 with transport available, although limited. We hire the whole pool, so whether you swim lanes or just wish to have gentle exercise, please come along and join the activity.
There will be yoga at Millbrook House on Tuesday between 1:45pm and 2:45pm. The cost is £4 to include refreshments. All welcome for gentle exercise and refreshments afterwards.
Coffee and chat is on Wednesday starting at 10am until 11:30am. The cost is £2 to include drinks and cake. Staff are on hand to help with any queries and to demonstrate equipment.
On Thursday, our Mix and Mingle group will resume starting at 10:30am. This group enjoys many activities including craft, quizzes, singing and each other's company. There is currently a waiting list for this group, but do not hesitate to call the office to put your name down on the list.
Next Friday, the 11th, we will be holding a bucket collection in Asda Foyer between 10am and 2pm. Please come along and say hello.
We have our next pudding and quiz evening on Friday the 18th of October at Millbrook House. Teams of 4 are very welcome. The cost is £5 per person to include homemade pudding and a fun-packed quiz. The evening starts promptly at 7pm, so bring family and friends along to enjoy. If you wish to come along, please call the office before Wednesday the 9th of October.
A date for your diary is Tuesday the 22nd of October, starting at 2pm. Our next Eye on Social, when Steve Love will be joining us to entertain with chirpy songs about the ups and downs of Isle of Wight life. This is open to everyone. Please come along and enjoy entertainment with refreshments to follow.
We now have our packs of 10 Christmas cards on sale for £3.50. This year we have a variety of designs on offer, so please call the office or pop into Millbrook House to purchase.
Our monthly 100 Club has spare balls available. If anyone would like to buy a ball, it is £2 per month or £24 for the full year. The more balls in draw, the higher the prize money each month. If you would like to take part in our monthly draw, please call the office. This is part of our fundraising activities.
If you are interested in joining any of the activities, please do not hesitate to call the office and speak to Susan for more information.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio with the headline, Hamlet Court redevelopment could see family villas built on Cowes seafront. 2 family villas overlooking the Solent could be built on an Isle of Wight seafront. Hamlet Court Regeneration Limited have submitted a proposal to the Isle of Wight Council to redevelop Hamlet Court on Cowes Esplanade. Each villa would have a lower ground floor, a ground floor and a first floor, complete with studies, utility rooms, bathrooms, living room and dining rooms. Proposed plans include gardens looking out onto the esplanade and the Solent. Part of the application involves a demolition of the existing building on the site next to the seaside town's Queen's Road. The current plot, nestled between Lantern House and Vantage Point, is in a state of disrepair and has been altered in a series of iterations dating back to 1832, according to the planning application's design and access statement. The insertion of the concrete stairs in the 1950s have contributed to significant internal and external structural distress, the document states. Hamlet Court Regeneration Limited submission also notes the current application is the latest in a series of attempts to develop Hamlet Court over a number of years. The site is within Cowes Conservation Area, but is not seen as having special architectural or historic interest by Historic Environment Public Body Historic England, the document adds. In a section entitled The Need for Development, the statement reads, "The building is now beyond the point of repair and in its current state detracts from the character of the conservation area. A number of consultancies have conducted structural appraisals and have each separately concluded the building is unstable and, due to ground conditions, stability will worsen over the coming years. In addition, there are issues with damp, weatherproofing, unstable flooring and collapsed ceilings. The building is uninhabited. Redevelopment is necessary and overdue." Vantage Point residents Roger and Sheila Bradley said, "We wish to approve the above planning application for Hamlet Court, Queen's Road, Cowes. The current building is in total decrepitude and it must be replaced immediately for obvious reasons. Cowes is a very popular and special town, both for tourists and local people. Rebuilding of Hamlet Court is long overdue. This recent design is more appropriate as it is of similar design to the existing one."
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio read by Sue. Isle of Wight Council issues keep out of empty and derelict buildings warning. The Isle of Wight Council is warning that children and young people on the island are putting their lives at risk by entering derelict buildings. The Isle of Wight Community Safety Partnership, CSP, is calling on parents and carers to help educate their children after a number of reports of people going into empty and dangerous properties over the summer holidays. Many of these buildings are old and poorly maintained, concealing hidden dangers which are likely to cause sickness and injury, or potentially life-changing injuries or even death. The CSP, which consists of several organisations which work together to tackle, prevent and reduce crime and antisocial behaviour, is urging young people to think twice before entering such buildings and encouraging parents to discuss the potential risks, including the legal implications of trespass. Councillor Karen Lucchini, Cabinet Member for Community Protection, said, "Just like you talk to your children about staying away from strangers, it's important to talk to your children about staying away from abandoned properties and buildings. We would encourage parents to be aware of where their children are playing with their friends and make them aware of the hazards that abandoned buildings and unsecured site can pose." In 2021, 22-year-old art student Ethan Bonner fell through the roof of an abandoned building in Devon and was not discovered for over 24 hours. Ethan suffered a traumatic brain injury and, due to the delay in medical intervention, sadly lost his life 2 days later. The council is undertaking planning enforcement action in a number of instances, but legal processes take time. I'm also aware that through our excellent community safety partnership, that a range of other powers across all the partner agencies are being explored to help us tackle these unsafe buildings that are all too often blight on our communities. Empty and derelict properties contain dangers such as weak roofs and staircases and other hazards, including asbestos, lead paint, mould, broken glass and holes in the floor. Entering private property without the owner's consent may also be considered civil trespass and could lead to legal consequences. Backing the safety call, Superintendent Robert Mitchell of Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary added, "One problem for the island involves disused hotels. They represent a safety concern as they attract young or vulnerable people seeking fun or shelter. In some cases, people are drawn to the premises for nothing more than causing criminal damage and antisocial behaviour. The CSP has been working to address this issue for a long time. We are pursuing legal processes to ensure safety and cosmetic improvements are addressed with property owners. This process can be slow and frustrating, but not through want of trying by the partnership. Whilst efforts to have action taken by owners continues, the partnership has plans to secure buildings to prevent access, detect intruders, and improve security through CCTV and other trackable methods. Arson in particular poses a real risk to anyone who enters the building, including emergency responders dealing with the consequences. Those who are drawn to this type of behaviour need to consider the life-changing consequences if a fatal fire took hold. As well as causing serious physical harm to somebody, you risk a substantial criminal conviction. We will continue to work together to find a long-term solution with the owners to minimise the risk to the public. The organisations which form the CSP are Isle of Wight Council, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, National Probation Trust, the Isle of Wight Clinical Commissioning Group, and Voluntary Sectors Partners.
Air Ambulance charity on a mission to boost survival rates with CPR programme from the Island Echo, read by Lee. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance is on a mission to boost survival rates by encouraging people to take part in a free CPR programme. HIOWAA's CPR Skills for Life campaign gives participants the confidence to identify and perform effective CPR and use of an automated external defibrillator. 1 in 5 missions carried out by the Air Ambulance Service is to a cardiac-related incident. There are approximately 30,000 out-of-hospital cardiac arrests in the UK each year, with fewer than 1 in 10 people surviving. The CPR Skills for Life sessions are free of charge and are delivered by a mix of charities' critical care team and basic life support instructor-trained staff and volunteers. Participants learn how to assess a patient, call for help, perform effective chest compressions, and how to use a defibrillator. All members of the charity team have been trained in basic life support by the service's life-saving paramedics and doctors. From the finance assistant to the CEO, everyone is now a potential lifesaver. The charity aims to have its 150 volunteers to be trained by the end of 2025. Clinical Director of Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance, Dr. Simon Hughes, said out-of-hospital cardiac arrest survival rates are shockingly low in the UK. Every minute that goes by without a patient receiving CPR or defibrillation, their chance of survival decreases by 10%. Much of the work we as a clinical crew do is only possible because bystanders, often friends and family members, have acted quickly and have known what to do in an emergency. Businesses, schools, community groups and clubs can get CPR confident, including how to use an automated external defibrillator, by signing up to CPR Skills for Life at hiowa.org/CPR.
This is Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Friends fund TV to assist in helping educate patients on foot health. The Friends of St Mary's have generously funded £875 for a television equipped with Google Assistant and Amazon Alexa to help patients understand and educate themselves on good foot health and other healthy lifestyle choices. With the continued increase in patients diagnosed with diabetes mellitus, DM, coupled with the increasing demands of managing the condition and its symptoms, healthcare professionals have highlighted a need to educate patients so patients can become experts in their condition. Showcasing in the podiatry waiting room educational and motivational messaging, which is designed to encourage behavioural change and promote healthy lifestyle choices and good self-care practices, could help reduce the costly implications of DM, such as diabetic foot ulceration. Stephanie Stanley, Clinical Professional Lead for Podiatry, Southern Health Foundation NHS Trust, has said, "Thank you so much for the wonderful TV from the Friends of St Mary's. It will be used in the podiatry waiting room to give public health messages about ways to achieve good foot health, to enhance mobility and assist in maintaining independence. We also share our rooms with the musculoskeletal physio and spinal triage teams, and they too will be able to enjoy the wonderful opportunity to spread their public health messages too. We are very grateful and can see this TV will be a real help to our patients. Thank you so much."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined "Council Serves Urgent Works Notice on Owners of Norris Castle." The Isle of Wight Council has ordered the owners of the Grade 1 listed Norris Castle in East Cowes to make urgent repairs within the next 4 weeks. The authority's planning enforcement team, working with the Conservation Special Projects Officer, has stepped in to ensure the prominent building on the north coast of the island is protected from further deterioration. An urgent works notice with a range of actions to protect the historic property has been served on the owners, which they must complete within 28 days. Failure to do so will result in the council carrying out the work itself, backed by financial support from Historic England and recovering its costs. Today's action follows the latest condition report on the castle and farm buildings, which found widespread water leaks resulting in extensive decay to internal ceilings and plaster. Outbreaks of dry rot to roof and floor timbers and internal joinery were also noted in the report. Councillor Paul Fuller, Cabinet Member for Planning, has said, "The urgency of the situation means the Council needs to act quickly to preserve these nationally important buildings. The castle has been sadly neglected for a number of years. Despite us trying to work with the owners to protect it, we continue to be concerned about the condition of the buildings, so have now issued an urgent works notice. It's not the first time the Council has taken action to safeguard the listed buildings, with officers previously serving an urgent works notice in June of 2023. Despite the works being carried out, the Council says there has since been a rapid failure in the repairs. Sitting in an idyllic landscape park overlooking the Solent, the Gothic Revival-style Norris Castle isn't strictly a castle at all, but rather a grand country house with castellated walls that give the impression of a huge fort. The property was designed by James Wyatt and built in 1799 as a marine villa for Lord Henry Seymour. During the 19th century, it hosted numerous royal visits from George V, who visited in 1819, to Queen Victoria, who regularly stayed there with her mother in the 1830s, while still a young princess. The estate is considered by many to be one of the finest examples of a marine villa and castellated model farm set within a landscape park and pleasure grounds.
Hello, this is an article from the Island Echo, read by Sue. Gunwharf Quay takes next step in $45 million investment. Gunwharf Quay's owner, Landsec, has submitted a planning application to Portsmouth City Council for the third phase of its £45 million investment to give visitors an enhanced shopping experience. Phase 3 of the investment will focus on Central Square, a high footfall area at the heart of Gunwharf Quay. Guests using the basement car park enter the shopping destination through Central Square, and it acts as a link between all other areas of Gunwharf Quays, such as the waterfront and the avenues. Proposed works include converting a significant part of the vacant space previously occupied by Eden Nightclub, into a new family-friendly dining destination, enhancing the outlet's food and beverage offering and bringing new life to this part of Gunwharf Quay. Plans feature improvements to the existing buildings, aesthetics and facades to create a more welcoming and attractive experience for guests. The proposal also includes the installation of a large digital screen within Central Square, creating new opportunities to broadcast events for guests to enjoy, such as Wimbledon and Sale Portsmouth, and introducing new digital advertising space for brands. Yvonne Clay, Centre Director at Gunwharf Quay, has said, "This submission marks another key step in our long-term investment in Gunwharf Quays. We're focused on enhancing Gunwharf Quay so it remains an attractive place for people to visit and helps us bring even more of the best brands and best in-class dining experiences for guests to enjoy. Through these plans, alongside our continued sustainability efforts and strong local partnerships, we can continue to create value for Portsmouth's people, economy and surrounding environment. If approved, works to Central Square will commence in spring 2025. This follows the planning consent for Marlborough Square, which was granted in June, with works due to commence in early 2025.
Residents provide stiff resistance to Cowes Church Cafe conversion from the Isle of Wight radio read by Lee. A bid to turn a former Isle of Wight church into a lounger's cafe bar similar to Newport's Choreo Lounge has encountered stiff resistance from residents. Hospitality chain Loungers UK applied for a premises licence to open a food and drink venue in the disused early 20th century Cowes Methodist Church. However, the application was met with rejections from 5 members of the public at a meeting of the Isle of Wight Council's licensing subcommittee on Friday. One critic, David Miller, said the application was wrong on the basis of both the building and location. He said, "I believe the noise will be considerable. I do not believe this is a typical family eating place. If so, why the late hours? Inside, they will demand music, and you can call it background music. To me, background music is somebody tinkling on a piano. This, to me, is heavy rock. What I hear coming from these establishments, thumping bass noise." West Hill Road resident Susan Brown said, "The use proposed by the applicant is nothing like what was there before. There has been considerable opposition to this application in the community. It's not really wanted by the community, in my view." Birmingham Road resident Peter Morton said, "I still believe there is a public nuisance issue with this application. And despite the applications, the assertions from loungers, this is bound to turn into another party house venue in the same manner as most of the clubs and most of the pubs and restaurants in Cowes are used for that purpose. And as Susan said, yachties are quite noisy and tend to stay up late, and I don't believe it's going to be any different here than any of the other establishments in Cowes. And this is not in the high street, it is in a residential area." A spokesman for Loungers UK said, "We recruit locally, wherever possible, so we would bring benefit of employment to the town. We don't create the impression that at 11 p.m. or midnight, whenever we close, there's going to be 200 people at a lounge and then dispersing onto the high street. It's not the way a lounge operates." Loungers UK operates over 230 sites across the UK with 2 brands, the Loungers and the Cosy Clubs.
This is Den, recording an article from Isle of Wight Radio. Emergency powers used to secure derelict Sandown Hotel. Work is being carried out to secure a derelict seafront hotel, which has been blighted by repeated trespassing and vandalism. Since closing to guests in 2017, the Ocean Hotel in Sandown has become a target for arsonists and vandals, with a series of fires worsening its condition. Now, the Isle of Wight Council has stepped in to secure the eyesore site using emergency powers under Section 29 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1982. Councillor Paul Fuller, Cabinet Member for Planning, said this protective measure is a significant and positive step forward to reduce antisocial behaviour, while we continue to work towards a longer-term solution for this property. Our decision to use emergency powers to secure the building against unauthorised entry reflects the importance and seriousness of the situation. Intruders are not only putting themselves and the local community in danger, they are also risking the safety of our emergency services who are called there regularly. All potential access points to the ground floor will be closed using metal sheeting, while any potential ledges or staircase which may provide access to the upper floors will be removed or guarded. Meanwhile, vegetation will be removed from the esplanade frontage and an additional perimeter line of defence from unauthorised entry with HERAS fencing will be added within the gardens. The works are being carried out by Vectis Security Group Limited and are expected to take around 2 weeks to complete. Sergeant Ben Sharland from the South White Neighbourhoods Policing Team said the issues at the Ocean Hotel have persisted for a long time and understandably the local community have had enough. These problems have ranged from antisocial behaviour attributed to repeated trespass at the site to more serious offending such as arson, which presents a real risk to life. The building is derelict and is therefore in itself also a safety hazard to anyone who accesses it. The South White team have put a lot of work in, both from an investigation point of view and also collaboratively with partners to find an effective solution to these issues. The security measures currently being implemented are the next step in ridding the site of crime and antisocial behaviour, and we will continue to take action and work with partners should any further concerns be raised to us by the local community. Local ward member Councillor Ian Ward said, "The Ocean Hotel has been a blight on Sandown for several years, and I fully understand and share the frustration and anger of our residents. The owners have fought the Isle of Wight Council at every attempt to deal with the situation by taking legal action several times to oppose the council. Unfortunately, each case takes many months to resolve. I thank the receiver, the council's planning enforcement team and legal officers, plus the police who have all supported me. All the courts have agreed with the council, so hopefully we can now move forward." Alex Lightfoot, the Mayor of Sandown, added, "Sandown welcomes the action being taken by the Isle of Wight Council on the Ocean Hotel and has been proactively working with the council's enforcement team to tackle other sites. The action comes as the Isle of Wight Community Partnership warns children and young people that they are putting their lives at risk by entering derelict buildings. The partnership has called on parents and carers to help educate their children after a number of reports of people entering empty and dangerous properties over the summer holidays."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo with the headline "St Mary's staff up in arms over its significant increase to parking permit charges." The Isle of Wight NHS Trust has come under fire from its own workforce after announcing a significant increase in charges for staff parking permits. Currently, staff pay between £8 and £14 a month in order to park at their place of work. But bosses at St Mary's Hospital have this week announced that the monthly cost is about to be increased, in some cases tripling. As of the 1st of November, staff will pay anywhere between £120 to £480 a year for a parking permit. Currently, the most any member of staff pays is £168, based on a salary of £63,862 or above. As well as introducing a higher monthly charge, the salary bands have been adjusted to throw a greater number of staff into a higher price bracket. It means a worker currently earning a salary of £43,000 and paying £10 per month for parking will soon have to pay £30 a month. That's a threefold increase, It's a similar story for someone earning £65,000 and currently paying £14 a month. One member of staff commented, "At a time when the Isle of Wight NHS Trust is struggling with recruitment, when we are often in business continuity or critical incident, and staff are exhausted meeting the challenging demands on our services, the hospital has decided to increase parking charges just to attend work." Another said, "Fees for staff have now more than doubled for most, with some having to fork out an additional £380 a year. We are outraged. During the COVID pandemic, parking charges for both visitors and staff were suspended, but were reintroduced for staff in July 2022. A spokesperson for the Isle of Wight NHS Trust said, "Inflation has had a significant impact on costs of car parking management, maintenance costs, and the need to continue to invest in car parking provision improvements that will support staff, patient and visitor safety. Unfortunately, this means we must increase charges to keep pace with these changes. The increased charges are based on staff salaries and are now aligned with other NHS trusts. There are a number of concessionary rates and financial help is available for staff if needed."
Hello, this is an article from the Isle of Wight Radio, read by Sue. Leeson Road borehole drilling work progressing well. Work to drill 3 boreholes at Leeson Road in Ventnor is progressing very well, according to the Isle of Wight Council. The boreholes are being sunk to depths of up to 130 metres to help the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads further understand the ground conditions at this location and to allow additional monitoring equipment to be installed. Data retrieved from the enhanced monitoring will help partners agree an early warning scheme so the road can be reopened safely. Drilling on the first borehole is now complete, and the second borehole has reached a depth of 100 metres. Progress was interrupted on Sunday when a casing used to house the core samples taken from the ground temporarily became stuck deep underground. The casing has already been retrieved and we expect drilling to recommence yesterday, Tuesday, once the rig has been reset. This type of issue is not unexpected in such complex work, and we remain on course to complete the project within the published timeline.
CLA says government must put its money where its mouth is on sustainable farming. From the Island Echo, read by Lee. Bolstering the farming budget is key to kickstarting long-term growth in the rural economy and delivering on many of the Labour government's environmental targets, the Country Land and Business Association, or CLA, has argued. Just weeks ahead of the autumn budget, the CLA has set out a powerful rationale for increasing the agricultural budget to £3.8 billion a year by 2027-28, offering the industry the certainty it needs at a vital time of the transition process post-Brexit. Traditionally, farmers received payments based on acreage, but since Britain left the EU, the government has been gradually moving to a new era of sustainable food production, coupled with public payments for public goods in areas such as soil health, wildlife habitats, flood management, and access to nature. But the budget has remained static since 2014, despite spikes in inflation, major shifts in the importance of domestic food security in a changing world, and recognition of the scale of the environmental challenges. The CLA has been calling for the budget to be increased from the current £2.4 billion a year to £3.8 billion a year in England, with £1 billion budget in Wales, and has set out a detailed analysis of why this is so important. President Victoria Vivian has said, "Landowners can feed the nation and improve the environment, but they can't do it on a shoestring budget. Now is the time for a budget reset. Without the right economic, regulatory and political conditions, farmers will be unable to deliver on the multitude of societal demands that ultimately fall on them." The CLA applauds the government's ambition to reverse the decline in nature, pave the way to a net zero society, create homes and jobs in the rural economy, clean up rivers and stimulate health and well-being by encouraging community engagement on our farms with the right budget. Many CLA members are already well along this journey, but we need to know the government's ambition is real and not just a good soundbite. Achieving their aims costs money, and the Treasury must put its money where its mouth is. The CLA's paper sets out an assessment of the ring-fence agricultural budget needed in England to meet the government's commitments from the 2025 to 26. The analysis is built on enhancing current schemes and programs to meet the objectives rather than on radical reinvention. The budget covers three main programs. The Environmental Land Management, or ELM program, looking at new and exciting schemes to incentivize and reward actions that contribute to the Environmental Act targets. For example, the Sustainable Farming Incentive, or SFI, is the cornerstone of payments for public good, and we estimate it will cost $1.5 billion by 2027-28. High take-up of the various schemes will be crucial if the Environment Improvement Plan 2023's targets are to be met. The Nature for Climate program, which covers woodland creation and peatland restoration. The Rural Productivity, Resilience and Food Security program, covering areas such as technology, availability and uptake, skills, training, research and innovation. The Basic Payment Scheme, BPS, the previous system of support, is being phased out, and while it was worth £1.84 billion in 2020, it will fall to £480 million in 25-26 and disappear completely by 2028-29. Victoria added, the CLA believes that the ELM schemes have the potential to lead the world in creating a sustainable agricultural and environmental policy, and we support the direction of travel. But with BPS payments disappearing, farming businesses must not face a financial cliff edge. The new government says it wants to support farmers and boost Britain's food security, and now is a time to put their money where their mouth is and back them to grow food and improve our environment.
Good morning, Francis here.
And Sam?
We start with news items. Stick that up your pipe. It was announced yesterday evening that ExxonMobil have abandoned controversial plans to construct a CO2 pipeline across the Isle of Wight or on the mainland. The news was announced by New Forest East MP Sir Julian Lewis on his website. The Isle of Wight Observer spoke to the widely respected parliamentarian to confirm the details, and the news was later followed up by a statement from the company. The pipeline plan was to transport liquefied carbon dioxide from Fawley Refinery for undersea storage. The two preferred routes cross the Isle of Wight north to south or Isle of Wight north to west. Another suggested route cut through St Julian's New Forest constituency. The company cited to Sir Julian the lack of a stable long-term government strategy as the primary reason for shelving the £5 billion project. A later statement from them said, due to lack of policy certainty and timelines, we will not proceed with appraisal of CO2 storage opportunities in the English Channel at this time. We remain committed to reducing emissions and progressing large-scale emission reduction projects when there is supportive policy in place. We sincerely appreciate the valuable feedback and participation from communities and stakeholders during the Solent CO2 pipeline consultation process. The surprise decision will come as a huge relief to residents and environmental groups who had expressed concern about the potential environmental impact and safety risks associated with the pipeline. The company had repeatedly refused to answer detailed questions about the project.
Sir Julian also welcomed ExxonMobil's continued commitment to its operations in Fawley. The company's presence continues to be a significant contributor to the local economy. Environmental groups and local residents had raised multiple concerns about the potential risks to wildlife, marine ecosystems, and the island's landscape. More than 30,000 people signed a petition opposing the island plans, organised by West Wight resident Chris Davis. Councillor Claire Critchison, a member of the steering committee fighting the plans, said, "We're very happy with this decision. The Isle of Wight community has really come together over this. It's a positive example of victory for people power. It's been a real team effort. If these plans had gone ahead, it would have had a devastating impact on our environment, people's lives and businesses. This is such a relief on both sides of the Solent." West Wight MP Richard Quigley added, "This is good news for the Isle of Wight and Hampshire. It's also testament to the communities that pull together to oppose the pipeline. The island may seem insignificant to ExxonMobil, but we don't roll over easily. The proposal was only ever for the benefit of ExxonMobil. The island will be very pleased if it isn't going ahead."
Island veteran joins Help for Heroes team. An RAF veteran from the island has joined the Help for Heroes wheelchair basketball team after impressing coaches at an exhibition match designed to showcase the sport. Gary Butler from East Cowes, who was medically discharged in 1993 due to a spinal injury, will play in the British Wheelchair Basketball Inspire League. Gary approached Help for Heroes after narrowly missing out on a place in the Invictus Games. Help for Heroes run a variety of inclusive and accessible sports, activities and group events across the UK to provide support to veterans and their families. Gary said, "Joining the Help for Heroes basketball team has given me a real boost and I can't wait to begin training. Unfortunately, the injury I sustained while with the RAF led to PTSD and anxiety, which have been difficult to manage. However, having a focus through sport has really helped, and I am grateful to Help for Heroes and to Whitelink for the support they have provided to allow me to take part in a sport I love. Help for Heroes and British Wheelchair Basketball have provided Gary with a new sports wheelchair, and Whitelink are sponsoring Gary's travel." Island Port Operations Manager Martin Gulliver said, "We are delighted to support Gary with travel to attend his training and matches and wish him and his teammates the best of luck."
Cafe and bar plan meets opposition. A bid to turn a former Isle of Wight church into a cafe bar, similar to Newport's Choreo Lounge, has encountered stiff resistance from residents. Hospitality chain Lounges UK has applied for a premises licence to open a food and drink venue in the disused early 20th century Cowes Methodist Church. However, the application was met with objections from 5 members of the public at a meeting of the Isle of Wight Council's licensing subcommittee on Friday. One objector, David Miller, said, "I believe the noise will be considerable. I do not believe this is a typical family eating place. If so, why the late hours? Inside, they will demand music, and you may call it background music. To me, background music is somebody tinkling on a piano. This, to me, is heavy rock. What I hear coming from these establishments, thumping bass noise. West Hill Road resident Susan Brown said, the use proposed by the applicant is nothing like what was there before. There has been considerable opposition to this application in the community. It's not really wanted by the community, in my view. Birmingham Road resident Peter Morton said, I still believe there is a public nuisance issue with this application. And despite the applications, the assertions from loungers, this is bound to turn into another party house venue, in the same manner as most of the clubs and most of the pubs and the restaurants in Cowes are used for that purpose. And this is not in the high street, it's in a residential area. A spokesperson for Loungers UK said, we recruit locally wherever possible, so we bring benefits of employment to the town. We don't create the impression that at 11 PM or midnight, whenever we close, there's going to be 200 people at a lounge and then dispersing onto the high street. It's not the way a lounge operates. Loungers UK operates over 230 sites across the UK with two brands, the Lounges and the Cosy Clubs.
Museums Open Day hosts Orsa. The author of Those Magnificent Women and Their Flying Machines, Sally Smith, was guest speaker at the recent White Aviation Museum's Open Day. Sally recounted how the story of women in aviation began with a vicar, an aristocrat artist, and a woman in a lighter-than-air balloon basket. The event was held in Wham's new Hangar 2, which is also home to a number of displays covering its education work, schools, and with youth groups. Councillor Carl Love, chairman of the Isle of Wight Council, was among the guests. Wham's chairwoman, Helen Blake, said, it was a great day for us to showcase some of the projects we are involved with for the next season. The museum will be closing to the public at the end of this month, but keep an eye on the Wham website, whiteaviationmuseum.org.uk, for information about its various projects throughout the winter closure.
Rogue traders attempt to con elderly pair out of £1,000. Rogue traders attempts to con an elderly couple out of £1,000. The couple, who wished to remain anonymous, nearly fell victim to a scam after two individuals knocked on their door and offered to do some gardening work. It is alleged that the two men cut a few branches off a tree in the back garden and demanded a cheque for £1,000. The con was only unsuccessful because one of the victims wrote the cheque incorrectly. A relative of the couple, Lucy White, said, they came back the following morning and demanded another cheque. The victims said they would have to wait until they went to the bank, with the rogue traders saying they'd be back by 5 PM. As a family, we all went round to see exactly what these people were charging £1,000 for, and we had a word with them for trying to con that amount of money. Lucy and her family phoned the police, who attended the scene and left a police car outside for a while. She described the police as going as a deterrent, but no arrests were made, and police now believe that the two men have left the island. The police could be a deterrent all the while that they were there, but they eventually leave and we have to go home to feed our children. The two men just kept calling and knocking on the door, front door and back door at the same time, ringing bells. I stayed until I could stay no longer because I had work, and when I left they turned up again. Lucy found out the vehicle that the two men were using was later seen in Lymington. She said, my elderly relatives are feeling extremely vulnerable. Lucy has plans to set up a GoFundMe page to help victims of scams on the island recover, and encourages people that have experienced similar to contact her on 075 35 713 574. Police said, "We were called on Thursday, September the 5th, to a report of suspected rogue traders operating in the Cowes area. It is believed the group has since left the island. Officers have provided residents with crime prevention advice. We urge locals to share our advice with any friends, neighbours and relatives, particularly if they are elderly or have vulnerabilities. For more scams advice, contact Isle of Wight Against Scams Partnership."
West Wight is to get a dentist once again. A new NHS dental practice is to return to Freshwater and will be announced next week. Residents were shocked by the recent closure of My Dentist in the Avenue, meaning there was no NHS service in the whole of the West Wight. However, Totland resident Juan Yehu organised a petition signed by more than 2,000 people, and with backing from West Wight MP Richard Quigley, has claimed victory in their campaign. Speaking in an interview on Radio Solent yesterday morning, which involved Juan James Roach, Director of Primary Care for NHS Hands and Isle of Wight, confirmed, "In terms of Freshwater, we have worked hard to find a solution. We can now announce that there will be a new NHS to take over at Freshwater, with further details next week. I hope we can have better dialogue with the people in Freshwater and across the island." The island has lost 6 NHS practices in the last 18 months, and the lack of dentists has been described as critical. One said, "It's fantastic news." Mr. Quigley added, "This is good news, not just for the NHS patients that have been using My Dentist and were worried what would happen next, but also for the committed and caring employees. I thank the NHS Integrated Care Board for moving quickly and keeping me informed on their plans, and the community for coming together to highlight the issue. I will keep working on improving access to NHS dentistry for all residents, and I have written again to Minister Stephen Kinnock to ask for more support."
Plastic sweep in beach cleanup. Volunteers collected 452 items from a 200-metre stretch of Ryde Beach as part of a clean-up event. The Great British Beach Clean, an annual initiative, was led by Planet Aware, a local environmental group. The event is part of a week-long effort to clean and protect coastlines across the UK. This year, more than 460 beach cleans were organised, with thousands of volunteers taking part. The items collected were logged and will contribute to the Marine Conservation Society's Beach Watch programme, which uses the data to inform campaigns for ocean-friendly changes. In the past, this data has supported the introduction of charges on single-use plastic bags and bans on plastic cotton buds, cutlery and straws. The clean-up at Ryde Beach revealed that 81% of the items collected were plastic, highlighting the ongoing issue of plastic pollution.
Way forward after floods. Investigations into the devastating floods on the Isle of Wight last autumn, which saw hundreds of homes and businesses affected, have led to a series of recommendations. At least 317 properties were affected by the unprecedented rainfall during Storm Babette and Ciaran in October and November, leading the Isle of Wight to commission independent investigations into the causes. The findings, known as Section 19 flood investigation reports, include information gathered from those directly impacted, as well as input from private bodies with flood management responsibilities. The reports focus on Newport, East Cowes and Ryde, with additional investigations for Brading and Binstead set for release next month, and a Cowes report later this year. Newport saw at least 56 properties flooded, with Gunville particularly hit hard. The report for the town puts forward 8 key recommendations, including the development of a community flood plan and investigations into sustainable drainage systems to manage stormwater. Other measures include a review of flood maps, enhanced monitoring and investigations into the condition of culverts under Arthur Moody Drive and the watercourse at Ash Lake. In East Cowes, several recommendations have been proposed, including the establishment of a flood action group and the creation of a community flood plan. The report also calls for improvements to tidal outfalls and surface water drainage capacity, particularly at Church Path, as well as enhanced gully and highway drainage maintenance. The latest Monkton Mead Ryde report builds on findings from a previous flood investigation in 2021. Ryde experienced severe flooding in 2023, with 107 properties affected by Storm Babette. The report highlights property flood resilience, surface water management, and ongoing efforts by the Environment Agency to review the Monkton Mead Flood Alleviation Scheme. Looking ahead, the Isle of Wight Council will assess the feasibility of implementing the recommendations, considering the cost and resources required. Some actions will require the Council to work closely with key stakeholders and landowners, including Island Roads, the Environment Agency and Southern Water. Councillor Karen Luciano, Cabinet Member for Community Protection, said it was essential that we took action to properly look into the causes and impacts of the flooding. Many residents were adversely affected, and much distress and damage to properties resulted. We now look to take forward potential options to take preventative steps and mitigate the risk of similar flooding occurring in the future.
Customer survey on roads. Island Roads is conducting a customer survey to gather feedback on its services. The survey, covering all aspects of Island Roads' work, will run until Friday, October the 18th. It aims to gather views on verge maintenance, street control, street cleaning and weed control, as well as highway maintenance activities, signage, diversions and communications. The organisation is particularly keen to receive feedback on its summer season activities. The survey is available online at islandroads.com. Paper copies, including large print versions, can be requested by emailing info@islandroads.com or calling 01983 822 440. Island Roads Service Director Steve Ashman said, "Island Roads undertakes a wide range of activities throughout the year, from gritting roads in the winter to weed control in the summer, along with the year-round work to maintain the island's highway network. We genuinely want to hear people's views via this survey so we can see where we are getting things right and areas in which we need to improve."
Government should just get on with WASB compensation. Both newly elected MPs for the Isle of Wight have pledged their support to a group campaigning for fair state pension compensation for women born in the 1950s. representatives of the Solent and Isle of Wight Women Against State Pensions Inequality, WASPI, group met with Joe Robertson, Conservative Isle of Wight East, and Richard Quigley, Labour, Isle of Wight West, to discuss the issue. Sheila Simmons, coordinator for Solent WASPI, emphasised the significance of the meeting. It was important for the MPs to hear about the impact unfairly implemented increases to their state pension age has had on their 1950s-born women constituents, she said. The group sought the MP's commitment to fair compensation following the Parliamentary and Health Service Ombudsman's report issued in March, which found the Department for Work and Pensions guilty of maladministration and recommended compensation.
Joe Robertson expressed his support for the WASPI campaign, urging the government to make a swift decision to alleviate undue hardship caused by delays. Richard Quigley also assured the group of his ongoing support, committing to encourage the government to find a prompt and acceptable solution. The Solent WASPI group welcomed the MP's pledges to advocate for a fair and speedy remedy. The group's members, like others across the UK, believe they have been waiting too long for justice. Sheila Simmons added, after more than 9 years of campaigning, during which nationally more than 293,000 WASPI women have died, the Ombudsman has placed this in Parliament's hands. We thank Joe Robertson and Richard Quigley for their support and urge them, as parliamentarians, to do everything they can to bring about the fair compensation that justice demands. Our message to the government is clear. Please, just get on with it.
Isle of Wight Marathon 2024 to celebrate women. The popular Isle of Wight Marathon returns on Sunday, with this year's event celebrating women in running. The 2024 Isle of Wight Marathon marks the 60th anniversary of the first sub 3 hours 30 minutes women's marathon record by Dale Greig. Runners will follow a route through Cowes, Gurnard, Rue Street, Porchfield, Shalfleet, Yarmouth, Thorley, Chessel and Shalfleet before returning to Porchfield and Cowes to the finish line. The race headquarters and start point is at the Isle of Wight Community Centre on Park Road, Cowes. While all those who finish win a medal, there are extra prizes for those finishing first to fifth. The race gets underway at 11 a.m, with on the day cash-only entries available. £25 if you are affiliated with Running Club, or £28 if you are unaffiliated.
Railings painting complete. A project to repaint all the railings on Sandown Esplanade has been completed, thanks to a mammoth effort from Isle of Wight volunteers. The project, which began in July, concluded during a 4th session, with volunteers working under streetlights to finish the task. In total, a substantial 300 hours of volunteer time contributed to the project, resulting in 750 metres of Victorian-era railings being restored. Earliest pictures of the railings date back to approximately 1890 and show them painted black. But when volunteers removed old, flaking paintwork, they discovered the railings had many colours in the past, from sky blue to green and even orange. Organised by Councillor Paddy Lightfoot and funded in large part by Sandown Town Council, local businesses also helped out with donations of equipment. During the sessions, which saw more than 45 people working on one occasion, Seafront Cafes supported volunteers with 3 drinks and ice creams. Volunteers as young as 12, and some more than 90, contributed. And now on to White memories and nostalgia, starting with days gone by. The Isle of Wight, the county press has been bringing the news to islanders since 1884. We've delved into the archives. 125 years ago, in October 1899, a fire that threatened widespread destruction in Scarrett's Lane, Newport, was contained to the store where it started by the speedy action of firefighters. The fire destroyed the roof and contents of the hay, straw and corn store, but, despite concern from neighbours, it was under control within an hour. Military preparations for the possible outbreak of war continued at Parkhurst Barracks as the crisis in the Transvaal escalated. The troops in the 1st Battalion Rifle Brigade at Parkhurst were certified fit for foreign service, and marching orders were expected at any time.
100 years ago, in October 1924, former Premier David Lloyd George visited the island with his wife for the weekend. They stayed with Major General and the Hon. Mrs. Seeley at Brook House and placed a wreath on the graves of their former family medical attendant, Dr. J.W. Falconer McNaughton, who is buried in Ventnor Cemetery. The central garage in Lynn Street, Ryde, narrowly escaped being involved in a serious blaze when a van burst into flames outside the premises. The fire brigade arrived to see 8-foot flames leaping into the air, but soon had the fire under control. A stage-struck actress ran away from her home in Nebraska, USA, in search of a former teacher who lived on the island. Hubert Rogerson had taught elocution to Lena Lapidus at Omaha High School and told her that she would one day be a great actress. Alderman Henry Hindays Pollard, JP, died, age 87. The alderman was regarded as one of the grand old men of the island and had achieved an amazing record of public service in a variety of directions, including work on school boards, town councils and church communities.
75 years ago, in October 1949, the Flying 15 yacht Cowslip, which was due to be presented to the Duke of Edinburgh by the people of Cowes, was launched from Uther Fox's yacht yard in Cowes. The boat cost £375 and was painted in the Duke's colour, a very dark green. Mr. Fox would attend the presentation of the boat at a ceremony in London. The 3-storey detached house, Amberley, in Pelhurst Road, Ryde, was bought, adapted and equipped by the County Council as the first children's home of its kind on the Isle of Wight. Peter MacDonald MP supported the removal of sex discrimination in matters of pay at a meeting of the Business and Professional Women's Club in Newport. He believed that where there was equal work, there should be equal pay.
50 years ago, in October 1974, among schemes put to the County Council by Ryde and East Wight Trades Council was one for a pedestrian precinct at Ryde on High Street from Garfield Road to Star Street.
The Wight in Westminster by Richard Quigley MP, MP for Isle of Wight West. The House of Commons returns on Monday, which means MPs will be rushing back to Westminster following recess, although I'll be factoring in extra time for the ferry. As a Labour MP, I'm typically expected in London Monday to Thursday to carry out parliamentary business. Granted, that's a broad term, but it covers everything which enables an MP to do their job effectively. And being in London enables me to meet with ministers, attend briefings, raise issues on behalf of constituents, and vote. I'm also actively raising the island's profile and championing Isle of Wight West with every colleague, every office, and every minister I speak with. And ministers are listening. I then spend Fridays and Saturdays in and around the constituency, meeting people, talking to businesses, and visiting community groups. That way I'm better informed and better equipped to raise those issues on your behalf when I'm in London.
The plan was to take Sundays as a day of rest, but as a new grandfather, that plan's already out of the window. I digress. Now you may be thinking, didn't MPs just have a recess? Yes, summer recess, but it's all part of the parliamentary year. That year starts with the state opening of Parliament, which takes place just after a general election. That's when the King sets out what his new government wants to achieve. And from there it's our job as parliamentarians to be in the House to debate, to vote and to help pass legislation which ultimately helps improve living standard and delivers change. But I draw the way Parliament works to your attention because whilst I've been out meeting people, I've been asked questions like, why has nothing changed yet? And why haven't you fixed the ferries? This government was elected to deliver change. The King's speech set out 39 pieces of legislation the government intends to introduce in the months ahead. That includes renationalising the railways, fixing the NHS, delivering high-quality infrastructure and housing. As Labour MPs, we are working to fix the country's foundations and provide long-term, long-lasting benefits. Work to deliver that change has already begun.
A Love Struck Romeo in His Beige Larder by David Holmes. I'm always consumed by my latest project and easily lose the ability to think about much else. Currently, I'm renovating an old house. Being a workaholic is a well-established personality disorder. I've often written about my business success, and that's not a conceit, it's a fact. As with most success stories, I paid a price for my personal prosperity. At school, while my mates were focused on girls, I worked several jobs: spud bashing, shelf stacking, washing up, milk and bread delivery rounds, caddying for golfers, window and car cleaning, the list was endless. I did so much work, when I swapped school for full-time employment, I took a pay cut. Still, I barely had time for girlfriends as I focused on earning money. Many of us are slow starters, and I thought I'd catch up later. But, as those precious teen years pointlessly slipped away, I felt less confident and even believed I might be single forever. Annoyingly, friends and family started asking if I was gay or, "Have you got a girl yet?" I'm the middle one of 6 kids, 3 brothers, 2 sisters. The other boys were far better looking and slightly taller. They were fair-haired, while I was cursed with a boring brown blob that refused to be styled. Honestly, barbers and hairdressers pitied me. Girls were always attracted to my brothers, and the lads down the pub had girlfriends too.
Was I going wrong? I believed I'd grown into myself, but I couldn't wait forever. I resolved to work harder at it, put some effort in, and lower my aspirations. At school, I'd been attracted to the obviously pretty girls, those in my own year and the year below. You'll remember, of course, that 15-year-old boys have absolutely no chance with girls in the year above them. The best-looking are always in thrall to older boys. In my own year, one particularly good-looking blonde had a boyfriend who collected her from school in a flash car. Another dated a lad with a customised Kawasaki 900 motorcycle. How could I compete with that? Whenever I tried chatting someone up, I failed miserably. If a girl actually liked me, I wasn't interested in her. Looking back, I missed out because I was too picky and oblivious to the wonderful possibilities right under my nose. At a party aged 17 or so, I was getting on well with a pretty girl who appeared to find me at least mildly amusing. Some of my mates thought we'd be all right together. As the night wore on, I could barely contain my excitement. Would she really be the one? At last I plucked up courage and asked if I might drive her home. "What car have you got?" she asked. "A Triumph," I replied, nervously fingering the keys in my pocket. The tension was palpable. "Dolomite Sprint?" asked the girl, knowledgeable. "No, Spitfire," I replied. She abruptly lost interest. Sadly, I'd flicked her off switch. My fragile, hope-filled balloon of love was deflated. The object of my desire left with some other lucky beggar.
And now on to what's on, starting with Russell on song for church date. Russell Watson has announced a performance on the Isle of Wight. Russell will appear at All Saints Church in Ryde on Thursday, November the 28th, as part of his Magnificent Buildings tour. Tickets are available via his website. The celebrated British tenor tours the country to coincide with the release of his autobiography Encore, which recounts Russell's story of battling 2 brain tumours. He last performed at All Saints Church in December 2023. Speaking to the County Press last year, Russell told editor Laurie Little, "I love the Isle of Wight, it's beautiful, and I have been there a few times. One of the things I love about it is it's so peaceful and quiet, and you don't have the ridiculous influx of traffic. It's so green and colourful, it's beautiful. It's funny really because, as a kid, when I heard about the Isle of Wight, in my head it was the Isle of Wight, and everything would be white, such as the White Cliffs, the perception of a child." Russell is also recording a new album at Abbey Road, which is set for release later this year.
Jazz guitarist set for Arts Centre. A renowned jazz guitarist is set to perform at a popular arts centre. The Filippo Dall'Asia Trio will take to the stage at Key Arts Centre Newport on Thursday, October the 10th at 8 p.m. The band will perform a mix of gypsy jazz, bebop and classical music, creating a unique style of progressive guitar playing. Mr. Dall'Asta, who began playing at the age of 5 in Parma, Italy, has studied music in Germany, France, Holland and India. He has toured and recorded with many artists and has performed at venues such as the Royal Albert Hall, the Houses of Parliament and the Tower of London. Booking recommended.
Frankenstein fun at theatre. A theatre company is bringing a one-man show to the Isle of Wight. Lamp House Theatre will present Frankenstein, open bracket, on a budget, close bracket, at Key Arts in Newport on Thursday, November the 7th. The show, which has been touring the UK since September, will start at 7:30 p.m. The performance promises a mix of comedy and horror, with the sole actor playing 25 characters, singing, dancing and using a variety of accents. The show will also feature a new soundtrack and cardboard props. The theatre company has recommended booking in advance. Tickets are priced at £12 in advance or £15 on the door, plus a booking fee. Tickets can be purchased from keyarts.org or by calling the Key Arts box office on 01983 822 490. The show is suitable for those aged 14 and over due to horror references, gore and flashing lights. Theatre goers can expect plenty of hats, puns and references to Mary Shelley and Boris Karloff.
Hall date for string quartet. The internationally acclaimed Carducci String Quartet is set to perform in Freshwater. The group will play at the Memorial Hall on Saturday, October the 12th at 7 p.m. The quartet, founded in 1997, has been praised by Strad magazine for its unanimity of musical purpose and has won several international competitions. The ensemble will perform Mozart's String Quartet No. 17, also known as The Hunt, Mendelssohn's Opus 13, which the composer wrote at the age of 18, and Ravel's only string quartet from 1903. Tickets from West White arts.co.uk. The concert is part of the West White Arts Association new season.
White Rider returns for 3rd edition. The Isle of Wight Bus and Coach Museum is hosting 2 events this month. The popular White Rider event returns on Saturday, October the 12th and Sunday, October the 13th. The event, now in its 3rd year after a successful 2023 edition, will see museum vehicles and visiting mainland buses come together to operate. Timetables and routes are published in the programme, giving all the information to ride around on some beautifully restored vintage vehicles for free all weekend. Programmes are available from Southern Vectis travel offices and various island shops and businesses. On Sunday, October the 6th, the museum will also host a get-together for serving and former busmen and women. The charity welcomes anyone who has worked for, or is still working for, any island bus and coach operators. There will be a light buffet as well as a chance to inspect the artefacts and vehicles of the museum. If you are able to attend, please email shirley@shirleywin.com so the organisers have an idea of numbers.
The Isle of Wight Steam Railway. From the 12th and the 13th of October will celebrate a celebration of real ales and steam. Entry to the site and parking is free. The bar opens from 11 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Local brews from Yates, Goddard's and Island Brewery, plus others from across the UK. Regular buses to Wootton Station from Ryde and Newport. Travel on Island Line trains to Smallbrook Junction from Ryde, Brading, Sandown or Shanklin.
And now on to readers' letters, starting with Support Solar by Penelope Baker from Lake. Well done those opposing storing CO2 in a pipe through this island, where land has geological sensitivity. The applicants view the island as weak opposition to a giant multinational without concern as to the consequence. Storage is an unsustainable solution. Reduction of CO2 is possible by less use of petrol-powered cars, using excellent bus services, and supporting renewable, clean energy locally. I recently spoke to the Planning Committee about land at Lake near to an existing industrial estate, 2 large supermarkets, a private housing estate, new planned housing, and primary school. A solar farm funded by Great British Energy is what is needed on that site, not high volume traffic on a narrow road comprising the number 8 bus route.
Develop these 3 sites. Bernie Coleman, Cowes. As we see much of our green and pleasant land swallowed by development, 3 sites in and around Newport come to mind. The derelict factory in Trafalgar Road, Camp Hill Prison, and the ancient boarded-up school on the corner of Lower St James and Lugley Street, Time to bite the bullet, I say.
Same Issues After 3 Decades by Christopher A. Bull from Brooke. In October 1992, I wrote to the county press about the excessive charges made by the ferry companies. After 30 years, there are still no controls. It is often cheaper to fly to Malaga or travel to France by ferry. I wrote then, "Were our forefathers more enlightened than us?" I quoted from Clark's delineation of 1814, deeming it highly serviceable for visiting the island to know the several rules for passengers, carriages, and horses, that they may avoid being imposed upon. We have here subjoined a table of the allowances according to Act of Parliament, and as requested by the Justices at the sessions held at Winchester on the 9th and 30th days of July 1810, after which followed the fixed rates for travel to the island, fixed by the users, not the exploiters. It was obvious, then as now, that where there is a cosy monopoly, legislation was and is necessary. For the future of the island, ferry companies' ticket pricing must be controlled.
Council meeting was eye-opener from John Hamilton Lake. I attended the Isle of Wight Council's full council meeting last Wednesday. Oh dear, what drivel. Quite clearly this council has little new to talk about. Most of the time was taken up with motions from 4 councillors. The first was about ferries submitted by 2 councillors, essentially saying the same thing, which were blindingly obvious and not within the council's powers to change. Another was about the lack of dentists, again obvious and powerless to effect. But the major motion was about the ExxonMobil proposal to put a pipeline across the island. It seems the 2 inconsequential Greens want this to be their platform, in despite of it being a Lib Dem motion. The debate was just several repetitions of the same words, so no debate at all really. My final comment is about dress standards. The Green Councillor for Carisbrooke and Gunville turned up in shorts, t-shirt, trainers and a baseball cap worn back to front. Perhaps he thinks these meetings are a party. The councillor for Binstead and Fishbourne was slightly better, no baseball cap, but cartoon trainers. I despair.
Sanctuary Days Off. Name and address supplied. The Isle of Wight Donkey Sanctuary is closing its doors for 2 successive days for the well-being of the donkeys, which is easier for the staff to give them much needed care. But if donkeys appreciate visitors so much, why make it 2 successive days and not a day every other day, so they hardly miss the visitors? 2 consecutive days away from the public could have a negative effect on the old donkeys.
Goodbye from Francis.
And it's goodbye from Sam. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
Hello. It might seem a bit odd to find a programme like In Touch discussing the pros and cons of peer support. After all, surely our whole purpose on this programme is based on the idea of blind and partially sighted people swapping tips, experiences, exchanging views about the things that fulfil us or what exasperates us. But let's face it, we're only a small corner of the Radio Week on In Touch, and when you need help or information, you tend to want it now and in many cases given to you face to face. So this week we're concentrating on peer support, where you get it from, who you get it from and in what form you prefer it. Social media and online meetings have clearly solved some of the logistical problems of getting a lot of visually impaired people together for those who can use those things confidently. But has the very ease with which people can get together online without ever leaving the comfort of their homes discouraged the real get-together. A trend increased enormously by COVID and its after effects. Has all this meant that the quality of our interaction has been diminished? Well, to discuss the implications of all this, I'm joined by three people with varying experiences of and attitudes to peer support. Janice Mitchell, who lost a good deal of her vision quite suddenly due to glaucoma and who's had a lot of support from Blind Veterans UK. Matt Johnson, who works as a data privacy lawyer using technology extensively in his work, but who's also a mentor for young people and has also formed many strong relationships online. I'm going to start with Bernie Warren, who runs two support groups, one online for people with the form of macular disease that she has, and one face-to-face for people of working age. Bernie, I want to start by asking you what level of peer support you were able to access when you were first diagnosed.
There was none at all. So I was diagnosed with my eye condition, which is DMO, back in 2011, and it wasn't until about 2016 that I actually found someone else with the same condition as me. And I was desperately wanting to speak to people. You know, I found that quite lonely, really, at the time. I mean, I met the person I did literally randomly in a coffee shop. And it was literally, they sat next to me, I sat next to them, we started talking, and then we found to have the same condition. And actually having the same treatment, and the difference it made for me was, I know I'm not the only one, but you do feel the only one if you don't know anyone else with the condition you have. Because I've got diabetic macular edema, so we're also juggling diabetes as well as an eye condition. And that can be quite challenging. So we're able just to discuss like what that's like, you know, and how do we manage that? Share a few hints and tips, really. And I think we learned a lot from each other.
Is that what led you to run these groups, as I say, one online and one face-to-face? Presumably it was the one about your condition that you started, was it?
Yes, I did. So I did that through the Macular Society. And in 2021, you know, I knew there was lots of people with my condition. But, you know, where were they? How did we get in touch with them? So we started this condition-specific support group online on Zoom, and it grew from there, really. And it's just been so lovely just to connect with people. So we also made a WhatsApp group as well, because we don't just have these conditions once a month. You know, we have them every day. So we support each other, you know, through a WhatsApp group as well, which is great when you're having lots of treatment and just needing that extra person there who's actually been through it with you.
Right, we'll come back to you on the differences between online and face-to-face, but let me bring in Matt Johnson. I said you were a mentor for young visually impaired people. How much of that is online and how much is it in person?
The vast majority of the mentoring that I do is online, and that's both for convenience reasons and also due to the fact that obviously when working with young people, there needs to be a degree of intermediation by the organization. So the majority of the young people I've mentored, that has happened through text communication. We've also had Zoom chats and other things which are a little more informal and a bit more immediate.
I mean, I understand the point about mediation. You know, there are lots of things that have to be done to safeguard people. But do you feel there are things you could do face-to-face that you can't do online?
No, actually, there have been some preliminary studies that show that people who communicate about vulnerable subjects are more likely to be honest when online. That was a study done in the context of dating, but it is equally valid in a situation like this. Sometimes it's hard for people to just sit across from someone who's metaphorically staring at them, saying, you know, I'm struggling with being bullied, or I'm struggling with wondering what my future is going to hold, et cetera, especially for, you know, younger people. And actually the ability to put it all in writing, think about it and send it is, I would say, in a lot of cases, more valuable because it gives them that degree of time and introspection, and it also gives them that degree of remove. You can't always speak openly in front of your parents or your family or your whatever. And that was also super beneficial for them to sort of say, oh, well, actually, I can write this stuff down. And my parents can't read Braille. Isn't it great? So
actually, because you've introduced that personal element into it, I know that you've formed a good, strong relationship that started online.
Several, yes.
Yeah. More that way than running into people?
Bizarrely, yes. Actually, last two relationships have begun on the internet, and we had common friends, but also some of those friends we hadn't physically met. I've made also a lot of really close friends in several countries. I'm a language guy, and so I like to practice languages, and then suddenly you're talking about meeting up and going out together, and suddenly it's a friendship, and that has been incredibly valuable for me over the years.
Let me bring in Janice. Janice Mitchell, you lost your sight much later in life than Matt. Where did you get the most effective support from in the beginning?
I didn't get any support for a year. I didn't know where to turn. And then I applied to be assessed for a guide dog. So they asked the golden question for me. They asked if I had done any military service, and I did. I served in the Royal Navy. So that turns out that's where I have got the majority of my support, a combination of Sight Scotland veterans, which only covers Scotland, and then the other veterans who cover the whole of Great Britain.
Why was that such a golden ticket then?
Because my GP realised I needed counselling because of literally losing my sight overnight. And again, there was nobody around that had happened to. But the waiting list for counselling was 3 years. And because I was a veteran, I was able to access the NHS using the Veterans Covenant. And I literally saw a counsellor within 3 weeks, which made a huge difference to me.
Right, great for you. Not available to a lot of people.
Not for everyone.
But same question to you as I've asked to the others. How much of that help that you got was face-to-face and how much online?
The majority, I'd say 80% of mine is face-to-face and 20% online. I can find it difficult online because my sight really varies day to day. And I'm for the generation that I go by people's body language. So then it almost creates a bit of a barrier for me.
Because you would like to use the little bit of sight you've got left, which you can do face-to-face, but you can't online, or not satisfactorily.
Yeah, I struggle with it online, but face-to-face, it suits me better. And then after I left the Navy, I was a nurse and also did a counselling degree. And that was all face-to-face. So really, it's what I'm used to. I'm a people person. I'm used to being in the room with the person.
So do you think there is a generational difference here? Because, I mean, Matt's just described what happens with the young people that he mentors, but presumably quite a lot of the people who get help from Veterans UK are getting on a bit. Can I put it that way?
Yes, yes, you can. I'm lucky. I'm classed as one of the young ones. But yes, a 90-year-old, no matter how many times you teach them, they're just not comfortable with technology. I think it is very much a generational thing. 90-year-old veterans want to sit in the same room as the person they're talking to. There was a lot of problems during COVID. We couldn't have meetings like that. It had to be done on the telephone or using the internet. And a large majority of people just said, no thanks, I'll wait until we can all get back together again.
Not knowing how long that might be, of course, at the time.
I know, we didn't have a clue at the time. We thought it would be a few months.
Well, in a way, what you've just described, is one of the reasons that we kind of raised this, because many of the sight loss organisations that we spoke to, Glaucoma UK, Blind Veterans UK, your organisation, the Macular Society, Bernie's, obviously had to suspend regional face-to-face groups in 2020. That continued well into the following year, though most of them now do report a recovery of those face-to-face meetings since 2022. Not all of them have started up again. Even now, the Macular Society, for instance, says 276 out of 325 local groups are now meeting again, although some have opted to stay online. And they note that since their annual meeting went digital in 2020, participation is markedly up. So there's a real variation. Bernie, presumably your face-to-face group couldn't meet during COVID. What do you think was lost at that point?
I think one of the things that was lost was actually getting out of the house. For some of us, getting out of the house can be a bit of a challenge. And I think that was what really made the face-to-face meetings really valuable. It sort of gave us a purpose to go somewhere, to meet other people. And we met in the pub, and that's where we meet, actually. We went back to face-to-face, which has worked well for us, although we did meet online during COVID. I mean, I see the advantages and disadvantages in both, but in the face-to-face atmosphere, you can share other things, so practical things. So, for example, apps. If you've got a good phone app, we can show that easily in a face-to-face environment, or we bring technology along. Oh, I've used this light or whatever. What do you think of this? And that's been really good. The Zoom meetings for my DMO group, we never had met face-to-face until we had a weekend away. And that was the first time we met face-to-face. It was lovely to meet people face-to-face. But what was funny was that on Zoom, you only see the top half of people. You don't see any more than that. Now, I'm only 4'8". So when people met me in person, I was a lot shorter than they were anticipating. And it was just funny because you just don't get that over Zoom,
Yeah. Look, I want to bring Matt back in at this point. Janice raised the point about people who were really, very old, but of course what you have to remember is most of the people who go visually impaired become blind or partially sighted when they're over 65. And then there's, Bernie's point that perhaps people aren't getting out of the house, almost maybe organisations are thinking, well, why do we go to all this trouble when we can get more people online? What's your comment on that?
I would never say that meeting up with people in person isn't valuable. A change of scene is incredibly useful. And as you say, there are certain things that work better in person. I'm a musician, right? You can't do that very easily online. There are certain things you can do, but in general, it's fun to get together and jam. My view on it is, firstly, it doesn't always work for people who are, 6 hours away, or in my case, 6,000 miles away.
That's because someone you want to meet is 6,000 miles away.
Precisely. Or in situations where someone was talking about looking for people who shared their condition or shared their particular struggles, they may not be within the same town, or the same country sometimes. And so you can be isolated in central London, or you could be isolated in the Hebrides, right? But at the end of the day, the ability to just sit down and say, hey, look, anybody out there struggling with this? Because I'm at my wit's end. I think that's an incredibly, incredibly valuable thing. So I would like to hope that, organizations can sort of do both and perhaps use the online platforms to fuel in-person meetups. The human instinct for physical interaction and the human need to be close to other people is strong enough that any organization who said we're going strictly online without needing to would find itself distinctly unpopular.
Janice, Veterans UK, are they beginning to go back to, if you like, a mixture of face-to-face and online?
Yes, they are pretty much going to remain always in person with a lot of internet backup as well, which is the ideal world for me. I also take part in a weekly phone call with veterans that are too far away to be able to attend any of the centres. I've been doing it for 2 years now, and it's remarkable how close you can become to a person that you've never ever physically seen.
You wonder if this is a skill that we will develop because of how prevalent online is. Although it doesn't feel natural to older people, it clearly feels more natural to Matt. I'm just wondering if, almost that's the way that we will develop, as being able to make these kind of relationships online and go a bit deeper than we thought we could.
Yes, I never thought I would. One person in particular, we almost feel as if she's my big sister. It's remarkable the trust and the bond that you can build without actually being face to face. And I never thought that would happen. But that just proves to me that it's quite successful doing it online.
I just want to end really by putting the same question to all of you. I should have warned you about this, but I'm expecting you all to think on your feet. I'll stay with you, Janice, if I may. I mean, I'm just wondering what the best piece of advice you've got in terms of peer support.
I think the best piece of advice that I got is to face the fear that you've got and do it anyway, because life doesn't stop when you lose your sight suddenly. I personally have achieved more in the last 4 years than I have in a long time. That's because of the support I've had for others that said, you can do it. And now I realise I can actually do just about anything. We just need to learn to accept and adapt to our situations.
Matt, you've had a bit of time now, thanks to Janice, to think about
I
it.
appreciate you taking one for the team there.
That's not fair.
My response, unfortunately, is going to harken back to other things I've said here. Strengthen your tech skills to the maximum extent you can. The internet is a bit of a fast-flowing river, I admit, but as soon as you are confident enough to jump in, join the conversation, you will find those support avenues opening up. And if strengthening your tech skills means that you can grab an Uber, read the menu at a restaurant and pay for it, well, that would also improve your in-person connections as well. It is very much a force multiplier in the world of finding support and finding connection.
Right, and I'll just say, because you've given me that opportunity, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to have a sort of brains trust on tech and where you can get the best help and who you can get it from. And we'd like to hear from people who can tell us where they're getting their help from, how easy it has been to find someone to help them, etc. Let me just go finally to Bernie on this, because you said you went 5 years without meeting anyone. I'm just wondering what the best advice you got when you did start meeting people in the same boat.
I think for peer support, we are all together. There's something that unites us. And just to look out for support when you're ready. I think you have to be ready to meet others in the same situation as you are. But do look out for it, whether it's online or face-to-face. Be open. I'll be open to either. Because once you've found someone, to get support from, and also equally to give support. It's not just about taking, it's about giving as well. I think it can really revolutionise your thinking of your condition, because you're not alone. And if you can't find it, see if you can, join with a charity or something to make out your own support group for the condition that you have.
As you did. We'll have to leave it there. Bernie Warren, Janice Mitchell, Matt Johnson, thank you all very much indeed. And that's it for today. But please share your own views on peer support, including the best bit of advice you got. You can email in touch at bbc.co.uk. You can leave your voice messages on 0161 836 1338. From me, Peter White, and producer Beth Hemmings, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing the 4th of October 2024. Newport area, Morehouse Court, Crocker Street, 12 St James Street, 1 Holyrood Street, 10 Crocker Street, Island Beds, 90 High Street, Mencap, 69 High Street, Outside the Entertainer, St James Street, Andrew Ross, 28 Holyrood Street, 48 High Street, 120 Lower St James Street, 36 High Street, Hong Kong Express, Holyrood Street, 3 Cyprus Road.
In the Ryde area, pavement outside 29 to 30 Cross Street, 60 Union Street, 45 George Street, 39 Nelson Street, the Nail Guys 64 High Street, 73 George Street, Cloud 9 Cross Street, 63 George Street, 116 High Street, 18 to 19 Cross Street, Serendipity Diamonds 185 High Street, 17 George Street, Flat 6 Colonnade Lynn Street, 1 Fallen Road Bembridge, and in the Ryde area skips 38 Princes Street, 15 Ribelow Street, and the Lodge Ferry Road Seaview.
Shanklin area, 112 Regent Street, 109 High Street, 47 Regent Street.
In the Cowes area, 1 Beckford Road, 5 Granville Road, 72D High Street.
Totland area, Egan House, Broadway.
Sandown area, 3 Pier Street, 27A High Street, and in the Sandown area skips, 3 Station Avenue.
Brading area, 50 High Street, Brading. Northwood House, 31 High Street, Brading. Brading area skips, Homewood, the Mall.
In the Ventnor area, Fire Station 19 South Street, 10 Trinity Road, and in the Ventnor area skips, Vibena Cottage, Church Road, Knighton, and the Fire Station 19 South Street.